So we're starting with what we call the graphical model um, unit. Graphical model unit is, as the word suggests, we're looking at graphs and we're looking at how can I solve my equation or my problem using the graphs. Okay, so we're going to learn how to graph using Excel, because most of the time when you go to colleges and universities, they require you to use technology to graph. You can't graph by hand, and you can't use, like, find the equation by hand. You should be using some kind of technology. Excel is the most used form of technology to do the graphing. So we're going to learn how to graph using Excel, and then we're going to learn how to find the line of best fit using Excel as well. Okay? But before we start that, we're going to look at different trends in graphs and what does that mean. Okay? When I'm looking at a graph, what can I take? What kind of information can I take out of my graph? All right? So the goal for today is to analyze trends in graphs and make prediction. Right? We're going to look at the graph and see what is this telling us. So a graph is a visual representation of the relationship between two quantities, right? Because I always have the x and y axis, right? So it's a visual representation of the relationship between an x and a y, which is the dependent and the independent variable. It shows how one quantity changes with respect to the other quantity. So when you're looking at a graph, you can say that as this is growing, this is growing, or as this is going up, this is going down. You're going to be able to visualize this, to see this visually. Okay? So let's look at some examples here. So the first example says the relationship shown in each graph, and be specific. We have Jack's babysitting, and then you can see here that on the x-axis we have the hours worked, and on the y-axis we have how much he earned. Correct? So what can you tell me about his earning and his hours worked? What can you look, if you look at the graph, what do you see in that graph? What kind of trend do you see in that graph? Yes?
The more that he works, the more earning he gets.
Okay. But is it like what kind? It's a constant change, right? It's a constant, it's increasing constantly, right? So as the number of hours Jack works, increases, his earnings increase, at a constant amount, or by a constant amount. Correct? Right? If he works for 1 hour, he's going to get $10. If he works for 2 hours, he's going to get $20. If he works for 3 hours, he's going to get $30. Right? So it's increasing by $10 for every hour he works. Questions about this? The amount of a compound investment. So what we see here, we have time, and we have the amount of money that we have in the bank. What do you guys see there? As time increases, what's happening to the amount of money? it gets larger, so it's increasing, right? So as time increases, as time goes by, the amount in the bank is increasing. Is it increasing at a constant amount? No, right? It's increasing at a, what do we call this shape? Exponential growth. All right? So we're gonna say that the amount of the compound interest investment increases over time. So we see it slowly increases at first, and then it increases very fast after, right? So we have slowly at first, which that describes exponential. This is their own graph here. The graph should look like so you have a coffee cup, has coffee in it. The temperature of the coffee, what do you see? Decreases. How does it decrease over time? It gets cooler, it decreases fast first, right? And then it slows down. When it gets to room temperature, right? It's not gonna cool down anymore. It's gonna slow down, it's gonna flood. Okay. So the coffee temperature decreases over time. Rapidly at first. Then more slowly. Finally leveling off at room temperature. And multiply this by this, what do you get? Should be plus 80 minutes. I'm telling you, you have to multiply this by both of these. This by both of these. Yep. You got it because you wanted negative 9x squared, right? What do you multiply x by negative 9x squared?
Oh, okay. And then to get this,
Are we okay with this? Fertilizing a field. So you have the crop yield on the y-axis, and then you have the fertilizers used on the x-axis. What can you tell me about this graph? Yeah.
Started to increase and then it slowed down.
So you increase at first, it reached a max, right? And then it went back down. Does this remind you of quadratic? Right? If you look at, like, if I actually finish drawing this on the other side, right? It's a parabol. So it's going to increase at first, it's going to reach a max, and then it's going to decrease after that, right? Because the use of fertilizer is good at a certain amount, like any kind of drugs, right? After that, it's going to affect you badly, right? So if you increase the fertilizer, you are going to burn your crop. And that's why you're going to have less and less crop, okay? So your optimal value would be this much fertilizer, okay? So looking at a graph, you need to understand the graph, all right? So what do we say for this? We say a fertilizer use increases the crop yield. As fertilizer increases the crop yield also increase. To a maximum. And then decreases. All right. So trends in graph are useful. They are used to track or to justify decisions and make predictions, right? So trends, which are patterns of change. What that means, so a lot of times if you're buying stocks, or if you are a government and you want to make decisions on how many schools to open, or if you're a school board and you're making decisions if you're going to open a school, or if you're whatever, if you want to buy more property in this area, or if you want to buy, I don't know, right? So they use these trends in the past to see what's happening, right? So they can make decisions for the future. Because if you know, for example, that right now in this area you have 20,000 births, right, for example, and you need a school in 5 years, you can't plan in 5 years. You have to start planning from now, right, so you have the school ready in 5 years, okay? So it's things that you have to look at, trends in graphs that you have to look at to predict what's going to happen later, okay? So this is an example here. We have a graph here that is the number of Ontario births from 1945 all the way to 2005, okay? And when we're looking at the graph,
Bless you.
thank you. When we're looking at a graph, we see that we have, sometimes we have increase, sometimes we have decrease.
Bless your soul.
Thank you. And then we have constant time, okay? Constant means it's flat, okay? It's horizontal, it's not changing, okay? So that's the three broad groups. So we have either increasing, right? So when you're explaining, you're going to say it's either increasing or decreasing, or constant.
Are you seriously teaching? Like, school wanted to teach it. So they changed his mind. We can do lunch. So if you just want to ask everybody their preferences. I'm just going to share her pencil.
Sorry.
And then Maya will cut a check because she can't use her P card, so somebody has to pay for it, but she'll
Maya?
cut it. Claudia will cut a check to cover pays for it. Okay?
How about last week we did show mama?
Yeah. No, wasn't there anything else that has keto and not keto? I don't know.
That's why I'm thinking like you know next week because they have rice and they have bread and what do you want?
I don't know. Let me think on
about
it.
it later.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, so when we're explaining, these are the three terms that you're going to be using. Now you're going to be saying like increasing slowly or increasing fast or decreasing slowly or you have a constant, right? So these are what you are going to use to explain. Now let's look at, we see that the graph is already split for us, okay? We see that we see an increase here, and then since we start seeing a decrease, then this is our first portion. Okay, so let me go back here 1 second. So if you're looking at the graph, right, you're seeing an increase, and then suddenly you start seeing a decrease. Because you start seeing a decrease, then we're going to stop and then we're going to talk about that first portion. Okay, that first portion, what can you tell me about that first portion? It's rapidly increasing, right? So from 1945 to, I want to say that's a 1960, right? From 1945 to 1960, we see a rapid increase in Ontario's birth, right? So we can say that the number of births rapidly increased to a maximum of 160,000. Now, you can write it in any way you want. I'm just going to write it as this statement, okay? So the number of births in that period of time from 1945 to 1960 rapidly increased, to a max of 160,000 in 1960. Then we're looking at another part here where it is actually decreasing, right? So we look at from 1960 all the way to about 1975. We see that we have a decrease. Why did we stop here? Is because after that we see it's constant, right? We don't see any change. So that's why we stop there. So we can explain right now and say that from 1960 to 1975, what do we see? A rapid decrease at first, but then it slowly decreases after that, no? So if you look at the first part of the 1960, from 1960 to 1965, we see a rapid decrease, and then after that we see a much slower decrease, right? It looks like this, right? So we see like a rapid decrease, then a slow decrease after. So the number of births decreases rapidly. more slowly. From 1975 to 1980, what do we see? Constant, no change, right? Or very slight change. So the number of birth, constant, no change. Now, what can you tell me about the next part? About this part right here. Slowly increases at first, then rapidly increase. Okay, and that's between the year 1980 and 1990. So we have number of birth increase slowly at first. And then more rapid.
In 1945 to 1960, that baby boomer era.
And then what do we see after that? So we're talking about 2000, 1990 to 2000, decreases slowly and then rapidly. Okay, and then I'm just going to talk about the last one because I don't want to keep flipping. What do we see for F? What do we see for this part? Increases slowly. Okay. No, the only thing is, why is it equal? What do you multiply x by to give you negative 5? Negative. Right? And then when you do negative 9 times negative 2,
Well, how did we get?
because you want minus 8x. Right?
It's
So do you want minus 8x? What do you multiply x by to give you minus 8x?
Okay,
Minus 9, because you want minus 8.
are you born 2000? Oh my gosh. What generation is that? Are you millennials?
All right. Now, this is a typical question, but technically I won't give you this part right here. If I'm going to give you, for example, a question like this, I will give you a graph, right, without the right part of this, so without this part,
What is it?
okay? This is an extension part, so basically you're extrapolating here. So what's given to you is the graph is given to you until 2000. Okay? So what do you see here? So what do we have? We have the aging of Canada's population. We have the year from 1970 to 2000, right? We have the number of people in million, and that's in Canada. Okay? And then there's three graphs here. We see the graph of the people who are age 15 and under in red. We see the people who are age 60 and over in blue, and the people who are age 80 and over in green. What can you tell me about the different ages over the year? Let's start with the age 80 and over. What can you tell me about that?
They're all lower now.
Okay. But what's happening to that trend?
Over time.
They're slowly increasing, right? So they're increasing, and they're about, now we have about 1 million almost, right, of people who are over 80. All right, now, how about the age 60 and more? It's rapidly increasing, right? From 1970, there was only about 2.5 million people who are 60 to 80. Now, in 2000, we have about 4.5 or 5 million people who are between the age of 60 and 80. That's double of what we started with. Okay? Now, there's multiple reasons for that, right? Number one, there's no more war right now because a lot of people used to die because of war, right? Number two, medication, right? We have more cures. People are not dying from the flu as they used to die in 1940. If the flu hit the town, everyone's dead, right? Because of pneumonia or whatever. There's better medication, better system, right? So that's why we have people who are living longer. How about the age 15 and under? What's happening to these people?
It
They're becoming older.
It's decreasing and increasing, right? But it's slowly kind of like, you see the trend after that, it's kind of like decreasing a little bit, right? We're not dying, but why do you think that is?
Our
We're getting
generation
older.
takes too much drugs.
So hard.
What do you think is happening? Why we have less people who are 15 and under? Yeah,
We're not getting classified as that because people are aging.
that's true. We are aging, but but the new people, right? I mean, my kids are now 15 and under, right?
Are doing this?
Nobody has kids. I don't know.
Less kids. We're having less kids, right? Before, each family,
We have like 5 kids. Now it's like 2.
yeah, they used to have even 10 kids in the past, in the 1940s, right? 10, 12, you ask like people, how many, your grandparents or your great-grandparents, how many siblings did they used to have,
A lot.
right? How many do we have right now, right? 4 counts as too many kids, right? So we're having less and less kids, and don't forget that also, we are getting married later in life. We're getting children later in life, right? Before, if you're 17, 18, you have a child, right? It's normal. Now, 35 is the norm, right? A lot of people they're having kids later in life, right? Because they're choosing to go to university or to college, get a career, travel, do everything, and then make a family.
I
Okay?
think that's why it's like wavy though, because it's like changes. Like a lot of people my age are having kids young.
Not compared to the vast majority of population.
Like I find a lot of people. I don't know if it's just 'cause I have a kid now, but I'm noticing a lot of people are having kids a lot younger. Like my mom's generation, 30 is the norm.
30s and now it's even later. Now it's like 35, 36.
I thought it was changing.
Yeah.
Like I see a lot of like teenage parents now.
I don't see it as often as it used to be. Before it was the norm though.
To have
Now
kids.
it's not the norm, right? Before, I'm talking 1940, okay? Before I'm talking when your great grandma got married at 15,
That's insane.
right? That was the norm. Now it's not, right? And people are having, instead of like 10 kids, we're having 1, 2, 3, right? government of Canada, and you're looking at this trend, okay? And pretend this, I know this graph is a little old, but let's say we still live in the 2000, okay? 20 years ago. And then you want to predict of what you want to do in 2010. You don't want this trend to continue, right? Because if this trend is going to continue, as we can see here, right? What's happening is the age 80 is going to keep growing, right? Because we see the medication is getting better, there's no war, people are not dying as early, there's people who are living now till 95, right? We see that more often. The age 60 and over, we see that they're also on the increase, right? And if we're gonna follow this trend, right, we see a decrease in the age 15 and under, okay? So if you are the government of Canada and you wanna make decisions, so you save the government. Now, first of all, why do we wanna make these decisions? Why do we care if there is more people who are 80 or more people who are between the 60 and the 80, and then less people who are in the 50?
Well, what did you care more?
Yeah?
Because if we're trying to appeal a certain proposition to a certain age group, you need to know the demographic to see if it's worth your time and effort.
But if you're the government of Canada, why would you care?
Population.
Why would you care that your population is between 60 and 80, or the majority of your population is between 60 and 80? And then,
You want the majority of the population to be 60,
why not?
because they don't work.
They don't work, and what? So what?
They can't contribute to the economy.
They can't contribute to the economy, and then most people who are between 60 and 80, they're retired.
And then
Who pays for their pension?
the government
The government. And then where does the government come to get the money from?
working,
And then most of your people are not working, so what's gonna happen,
the economy.
right? So you wanna make decisions into like, what do I do so I have more working people instead of aging people, right? Or what would I do? Because 60 to 80 or above 80, guess what they need?
Money,
They need money,
healthcare,
healthcare, medication, right? Who pays for all of this?
taxes.
The government, the taxes, the taxpayers, right? And the government has to budget for that. The government budget is gonna increase like a lot because we need more, because we have more aging people, right? So what would you do? You're the government right now, we are the caucus here, I don't know what they're called, and then we are sitting here and then we wanna make decisions. What do we do?
And we're in parliament.
Yes, we are.
I love parliament.
What do we do? What do you wanna do? Yep,
Want to increase the average amount of positions
increase the average amount of,
for all the increase of kids,
and how would you do that? Like what?
more funding towards like childcare or something.
Give people more money to work. The main reason why people don't have any more kids these days is because kids cost a lot of money, right? If you want to work and you want to put the kids in the daycare, well, you work here and then you put it for the daycare.
Like there's no
That-
way to work.
right? So you either don't choose not to have kids, so you don't put them in daycare, or you
don't
choose not to work, right?
Paycheck.
So increase the amount of child assistance, care assistance, or whatever that is. What else? So people have more kids. What else?
Increase minimum wage or something.
Minimum wage? And why would you
That
increase
would
it?
give people more money and then would be more lenient to have kids who have the money.
Okay, we can do that. Except I need more money for that. So what else can I do instead of increasing the minimum wage? Because that might hurt businesses too.
Jobs.
Create more jobs?
Change sexual education.
What does this have to do with it?
Make people
Right.
wanna have kids. Just like advertise it though.
What else would you do? Like if you're making laws here, you're changing laws, what would you want to do? You want people to work more, right? You want more,
Offer benefits and things.
okay, maybe you wanna, instead of offering benefits, how about increasing the retirement age? Instead of 65, make it 68 or 67 or 69 or whatever.
Oh my
Get them
god.
to work a little bit more because then they,
Well,
What's
they
the
are
yeah.
We are a huge country for immigration, right? We get a lot of immigrants. Who would you want to accept? Who would you want to open the immigration to? Everyone, like even 90-year-old people? Do you want more of these people? Like the
People with
old-
families, people
people-
with large families.
young people with young kids, young children, because these are the people who are going to work, and then these are the people who are going to turn 17 in the next few years. These are the people who are going to start the job in a few years, right? So you want to open it to families with new families, right? Families with kids, right? All right. So these are some decisions that we have to make as government, right? Even as a company, right? If you want to increase your teachers, your employees' work, right? Or if you want to know to improve on things, right? You're gonna have to look at trends. You're gonna have to look at graphs, and then you're gonna have to make decisions. All right. Let's write this down. So, predict the number of Canadians in each age group in 2010. So, age 15 and under, what do we see? If we're predicting. So what we're doing here is we call this extrapolating. We call this extrapolating, guys. Eyes on me. The reason why we call this extrapolating is that because you are extending the graph following the trend that you see. Okay? So by extrapolating here, I see that my trend is going down, and I see that in 2010, that's my 2010, right? I see that my number of 15 and under is about 5 million. Okay? Is about 5 million. Okay? This equal with a dot on top, that means it's about. How about the age 60 and over? It increases to about 6 million. $80 and over. It's about 1 million. We're just predicting how many people, what we have, right? Predicting the number of Canadians in each age group. What decisions might the Canadian government make in response to the trends in the graph? So, since we have a decline in the young people, an increase in the seniors, these are some possible outcomes. Increase immigration, for young families. You can increase retirement age. Increase child benefit. Improve on the health. Health benefit. Because you have an aging group, right? So this is basically some solution that you can have as a Canadian government.